construyendo mi camino es mi orgullo. Porque ahora mis anhelos son una realidad, gracias al apoyo y seguimiento que he recibido en una nueva oportunidad de crecimiento y autoconocimiento. He podido descubrir la belleza que nos rodea, y sé que dejarte fascinar por ella es más sencillo cuando no caminas solo. Esta vivencia me ha hecho pertenecer apasionadamente a México y a mi institución. Cruzar nuevos horizontes sin pensar en fronteras ha sido la mejor experiencia de mi vida.
Mi universidad es mi orgullo, porque me apasiona encontrar nuevas respuestas, buscar horizontes lejanos donde nadie creyó llegar y descubrir nuevos rumbos, proyectos y estrategias que consoliden mi naturaleza metodológica. La expectativa y la emoción han alimentado mi curiosidad y mi deseo por compartir la innovación, apoyado de los instrumentos necesarios que me permiten dar paso firme en el camino del conocimiento. Una universidad que forja sus bases en la investigación es una universidad a la vanguardia, una institución que evoluciona y que aporta a nuestra sociedad la información precisa para que nuestras condiciones de vida sean cada vez mejores.
Mi universidad es mi orgullo, porque en cada relieve de estas paredes escucho los ecos de una nueva inspiración. El impulso que recibí de quienes creyeron en mí me hizo saber que soy la única responsable del talento que puedo regalar al mundo. Mi esfuerzo y dedicación me han llevado más allá de mis sueños, despuntando en el éxtasis de los logros, y cada ejecución representa un reto más a superar. Aquí aprendí que lo más bello ha sido darle ritmo a mis pasos con el corazón e impregnarlos con mi espíritu.
Mi universidad es mi orgullo, porque quizá el camino que resta sea complicado, pero ahora sé hasta dónde puedo llegar y que todo lo puedo hacer. Aquí aprendí que las oportunidades implican tomar grandes decisiones, y la responsabilidad que éstas conllevan hicieron de mí una persona íntegra y comprometida con su profesión. Porque nunca caminé solo y pude consolidar dentro de estas paredes mis habilidades y conocimientos. Encontré una gran confianza en mi persona, y ahora me ilusiona adquirir nuevos retos para aprovechar con creces el apoyo que se me brindó en la construcción de mi libertad. Pues el futuro con grandeza existe cuando nos atrevemos a soñar un mejor mañana.
Mi universidad es mi orgullo, porque en cada jornada veo rostros inspirados profesionalmente que creen en mí y me motivan a compartir lo que sé, soy y siento, con la responsabilidad de ser mejor para que ellos puedan brillar. Nuestra casa de estudios me ha brindado apoyo en la incansable búsqueda por seguirme preparando y dar el mejor ejemplo, pues me inspira a ser constante y comprometida con la misión de superarme como ser humano, para que las nuevas generaciones puedan encontrar las herramientas necesarias e indispensables para su desarrollo personal. Porque para consolidar un sueño de esta magnitud se requiere coraje y convicción. Y sin duda alguna, veo un futuro iluminado de posibilidades infinitas.
El esfuerzo, dedicación y entrega de todos los que formamos parte de esta gran institución ha sido el motor que nos impulsa en el camino a la excelencia y que nos hace cada vez más fuertes. Estamos listos para afrontar nuevos retos y convertirlos en una realidad tangible. Día a día somos más persistentes, ya que tenemos una meta en común: formar profesionistas competentes y humanos, comprometidos con Hidalgo y con nuestra gran nación. Correr riesgos, asumir responsabilidades y continuar con el propósito de lograr igualdad de oportunidades no es una tarea obligada. Es un deseo que se alimenta con el ímpetu de las nuevas generaciones, quienes se encuentran dispuestas a contribuir con la sociedad por medio de una educación reconocida por su buena calidad. Nuestros ideales nacieron aquí, construyéndose poco a poco, forjándonos como una universidad a la cual todos pertenecemos orgullosamente. El amor, el orden y el progreso han sido nuestros estandartes a lo largo de este camino. Hemos aprendido que la firmeza y la entrega total son fundamentales para el desarrollo pleno de nuestra comunidad universitaria, llevándonos a hacer las cosas hoy mejor que ayer. Este es nuestro hogar, nuestro espacio, el lugar donde las ganas de ser mejores nos proyectan hacia la excelencia, la luz que ilumina con precisión el camino por recorrer para hacer cada una de nuestras metas realidad. Somos universitarios. Juntos logramos transformar y concretar un ideal tan sólido que es capaz de marcar la diferencia. Llevamos en la sangre la potencia, la decisión y la fuerza para trascender y hacer historia. Porque para evolucionar e innovar se requiere el valor y la conciencia necesaria que nos distinguen como la pieza culminante de este grandioso rompecabezas. Porque tenemos identidad y a cada paso que damos, avanzamos hacia el logro de nuestras metas. Porque estudiantes, profesores, administrativos, investigadores y todos los que formamos parte de la Universidad Autónoma del Estado de Hidalgo, caminamos hacia el mismo rumbo. Cada amanecer es una nueva oportunidad para crecer juntos. Cada experiencia nos fortalece. Cada momento es una puerta abierta hacia nuevos conocimientos. Somos unión. Somos valores. Somos el aquí y el ahora. Trabajamos cobijados por nuestra alma mater. Ella que nos ha brindado tanto. La que llevamos plasmada en el corazón. La que nos motiva a decir desde lo más profundo de nuestro ser: mi universidad es mi orgullo.
Damos la bienvenida a las autoridades que presiden esta ceremonia de investidura y conferencia magistral y al rector de nuestra universidad, el maestro Humberto Augusto Veras Godoy. Muy buenas tardes, sean todas y todos bienvenidos a la Universidad Autónoma del Estado de Hidalgo. En este histórico Salón de Actos Ingeniero Baltasar Muñoz Lumbier, esta tarde y en el marco del Festival Internacional de la Imagen, FINI 2016, nos hemos reunido para ser partícipes de la conferencia magistral la alternancia de códigos del profesor y la respuesta de desarrollo del alumno, la búsqueda de una agenda de investigación, así como atestiguar la investidura como profesor honorario visitante del doctor Ernesto Macaro, a quien damos la más cordial bienvenida. Sea usted bienvenido a esta casa de estudios. Solicitamos al doctor Roberto Rodríguez Gaona, secretario de Desarrollo Internacional de esta casa de estudios, haga y exponga la semblanza de nuestro invitado especial y la exposición de motivos del doctor Ernesto Macaro.
Muy buenas tardes a todas y a todos. Con su venia, señor rector. Es un privilegio en el marco del Festival Internacional de la Imagen en su 6ª edición tener el honor de presentar a nuestro nuevo profesor honorario visitante, el doctor Ernesto Macaro. El profesor Ernesto Macaro es conocido por sus estudios en enseñanza del inglés como lengua extranjera y por su liderazgo en llevar al Departamento de Educación de la prestigiada Universidad de Oxford a ser ranqueado en primer lugar de investigación por el Marco de Excelencia en Investigación del Reino Unido. Actualmente es director del Centro de Investigación y Desarrollo de la Lengua Inglesa como medio de enseñanza en la misma Universidad de Oxford, EMI por sus siglas en inglés, siendo el único centro de investigación a nivel mundial para la investigación y el desarrollo de la lengua inglesa como medio de enseñanza. Ernesto Macaro obtuvo los grados académicos de licenciatura en francés e inglés por la Universidad de Kent, maestría en lingüística aplicada por la Universidad de Warwick y doctorado en lingüística aplicada por la Universidad de Reading. Fue director del Departamento de Educación en la Universidad de Oxford del año 2013 al año 2016, en donde es actualmente director del Centro de Investigación y Desarrollo de la Lengua Inglesa como medio de enseñanza. Actualmente supervisa las investigaciones de los estudiantes de doctorado en los siguientes temas: patrones de alternancia de idiomas y reacciones de los estudiantes en China a nivel de secundaria que aprenden inglés, la manera en que el profesorado presenta nuevo vocabulario en contextos de inglés como lengua extranjera, las estrategias de los estudiantes a nivel secundaria, los efectos de canales de reverso en la producción oral de un segundo idioma y las estrategias del aprendizaje de vocabulario en estudiantes internacionales fuera del contexto de clase. Su investigación se centra en 2 líneas principales: el discurso e interacción oral en un segundo idioma entre el profesorado y sus estudiantes en contextos de inglés como medio de enseñanza, English as a Medium of Instruction. Las estrategias de aprendizaje de idiomas que el alumnado por sí mismo implementa a manera de facilitar y maximizar el aprendizaje con el propósito de vencer los obstáculos en el aprendizaje del idioma o el aprendizaje de una asignatura a través de un segundo idioma. De nueva cuenta, es un gran privilegio darle la bienvenida al doctor Ernesto Macaro. Muchas gracias.
A continuación escucharemos la conferencia magistral, la alternancia de códigos del profesor y la respuesta de desarrollo del alumno, la búsqueda de una agenda de investigación, dictada por el doctor Ernesto Macaro.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much, Roberto, for your very kind introduction, and to the President of the University for his invitation, and to all the people who have helped to bring me here and to organize my trip and my stay, which is unfortunately very short, but I hope that I will come back to the university sometime quite soon. The topic of my talk today is the teacher's code switching and the learner's developmental response. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, and if I'm speaking too quickly, just put your hands up and I'll slow down, because one thing that Roberto did not mention is that I was an English language learner at the age of 8. My first language is Italian, and then we emigrated, my family emigrated to Britain, and therefore I became immersed in English at the age of 8. And I understand the problems that learners have in hearing and understanding English. Okay, so I'm going to talk about 4 issues in what I'm going to call code switching research and practice. I'm going to use the word code switching, but this is a problematic word. There are 4 issues that I want to tackle today. Why are we interested in code switching anyway? What classrooms are we actually talking about? Thirdly, what do we actually mean by code switching, CS, in classroom interaction? And why do some people call it L1 use, first language use, and not code switching? Finally, what should we be investigating, measuring, and why, and how? Should we be investigating how much? What functions the first language is put to? What vocabulary? Or what structures? What are we actually looking for? So the overall theme is really about 2 groups of people. The first group is the teacher, and the second group, not surprisingly, is the learners. So it's the teacher's use of 2 languages or 1 language, and then the learner's reaction to it, the strategic reaction and the development for the learner. Because all too often in the literature, the research on L1 use, the learners are forgotten about. Now, there has been an enormous pendulum swing, yes, the pendulum swing, with regard to the use of the first language. In the early 1950s, 1960s, there was frequent L1 use, and it was generally accepted that it should be used. When I started teaching in the mid-1970s, the first language was used a lot, 50%, 60% of the time. Then in the 1980s, both in the UK and in other countries, worldwide probably, the first language was pretty much banned for a number of reasons, which I won't go into too much detail now. If it wasn't banned, it was just basically forgotten about, ignored as a language. I first began to be interested in this topic when I switched from being a language teacher to being a teacher trainer. And then I wrote this book back in 1997 called Target Language, Collaborative Learning and Autonomy. And in that book, I had done some research with teachers and with learners. And what I found was 4 basic things that teachers believed to be the case in the mid-1990s. This is in the UK. First of all, most teachers believed that the second language, in your case English, should be the predominant language. Right? What predominant means, well, that could be a percentage. It could be 80% or 85%, yeah? But they believe it should be the predominant language of the classroom. Most teachers felt that a limited amount of L1 was useful. And what was it useful for? Primarily for two things. The L1 facilitated setting up tasks. In other words, they facilitated the students using the language, using the foreign language. They also felt that sometimes there were certain lexical items, words, vocabulary, which came up in the interaction, which they felt had to be converted to the L1. It had to be explained through the L1, so which we come to know as focus on lexical form. And so then I felt that as a result of this research and other research that I did, that teachers held three basic theoretical positions. The virtual position, it's a bit of a play on word, virtual, like virtual reality. The virtual position says there is no value whatsoever in using the L1. So it should be banned. Yeah? The second position, which I called the maximal position, also teachers believed there was no value in use of the L1. But those teachers felt that the conditions for learning a language were not perfect. And so they said, well, maybe it's the students, they're not good enough, or maybe I'm not good enough, I don't know enough techniques for maintaining L2 only. And so that's what I came to be called the maximal position, which I think I will try to suggest to you is a very deleterious position. It's a very problematic position because it creates guilt. Oh my God, I would like to spend 100% of my lesson in the foreign language, but I can't because I'm not good enough or because the students are not good enough. The third position, does this work? Ah, yes, good. The third position, what I call the principal position, recognizes that there is some value in limited use and principled use of the first language in the classroom. So by the early 2000s, there had been another pendulum swing where some first language use was accepted. This is both in the UK, but also worldwide, even in the EFL world. EFL teachers, EFL theorists began to say, yeah, there is some value in the L1. So it was beginning to be tolerated. To the point then that we come to a couple of prominent publications, two books, one by quite a well-known writer, Guy Cook, called Translation in Language Teaching. Isn't it interesting that in 2010 somebody should write a book, Translation in Language Teaching, after many decades of people worrying about this, that you shouldn't be using, actually, translation in language. And then another writer, Glenn Levine, who, both these writers I have a lot of respect for, but, you can see code choice in the language class. We should have a choice about which language we use in the classroom. So, it's become a complete pendulum swing the other way, where, you would actually find it quite difficult to find a commentator, someone who writes books or articles, who, after 2010, who would question the value of the first language in second language acquisition. You can't find these people anymore. And I find that problematic. So why has there been such a huge pendulum swing? Well, because actually teachers and theorists don't know which way to go, and I myself have found this problem. What's the route? What's the road that we can take in order to understand, in order to come up with some kind of final model of this? But anyway, I've been working at this for many years. And one of the things you can say, well, let's look around the world now and what people are using. So we look at some research statistics, and in China, in Hong Kong, in China, Kong and Zhang found that teachers were using anywhere between 2 and 5% of L1, first language Chinese in this case. In my own study in the UK, I found that teachers will use something between 4 and 12%. Rowland, Yanziti and Brownlee in Australia found something between 0 and 18%. Glenn Levine in his university exploration in California, I think it was anything between 0 and 60%. And then Duff and Polio, 0 and 90%. So can you see this is huge variation even within countries in what teachers do or say that they do. Okay? So it's not so. The question is then, is it just because they're being pragmatic? Okay, teachers are just being pragmatic. They're just saying, oh, well, we use what we think we need to use and we know what we're doing. Or is it unprincipled and ad hoc? Is it without any principles? Well, if we now look at the functions of L1 use, what it's used for, yeah? Well, you can see all those different things. If you look at the literature, it will tell you that teachers use them for all those different things. Contrasting, providing metalinguistic cues, translating, giving L1 explanations, and so on, and so on, and so on, and so on. One of the interesting ones that I read about was we use the L1 as a shortcut to learning, a shortcut to learning. I thought that was a really interesting phrase, a shortcut to learning. What is a shortcut to learning? What would it be? What does that mean? At what cost would you use a shortcut to learning? You can shortcut to learn for an exam, but you may well be doing so at a cost to real learning. You may be learning superficially as a result of that because you are training the students for the exam by using the L1. Here, learn this vocabulary and you'll get through. Learn these phrases and you'll get through. Learn these words and so on. And I've yet to come across a study of the functions of L1 use, or code switching, which identifies a function that is always carried out in the L2, in the target language, in your case, in English. So here's a challenge for all students. Go out and find a study of teacher use of the target language, or of L1, and find one that is always only English only, or always L2 only. I'll be really interested, and if you find it, email it to me, and I will thank you for that. So, given that we've got such a complicated, ad hoc, what I think unprincipled situation, why should we continue to be interested in code switching research? Well, one of the reasons is that pre-service teachers, trainee teachers, is that okay? Understand pre-service, trainee? Okay. Is that they ask. I train language teachers, and they ask me, Ernesto, how much L1 can I use? Here's the trainee teacher. Here's the professor, and the trainee teacher says, how much L1 am I allowed to use? And so the professor goes and looks up all the research and says, well, the research says teachers are using anywhere between 0 and 90%. Okay? And so the trainee teacher says, okay, thank you very much. That'll do very nicely. So, we carried out some research on our own pre-service teachers, plus some other pre-service teachers in other universities in the UK. And at the beginning of the course, we said, here's a principle, and we want you to react to it, okay? It is important to expose learners to the L2, the target language, and to interact in the target language, right? This is the principle. Very positive. They were very keen. This is a really good idea, right? A year later, they had changed. And the reason for that is that they saw in the schools teachers using a lot of L1 in what I would call a fairly unprincipled way. Okay? And I'm just using a little bit of publicity there because this book has just come out and has got the study in there if you are interested in reading about it. Okay. Now, another reason that it's useful to carry on doing research on this is that policymakers always think they know the solution, okay? And they put pressure on teachers who are, let me get this right. So there's pressure on teachers who are trying to be reflective, trying to have integrity, trying to be professional. They begin to tell them what to do. Okay, so for example, Her Majesty's Inspectors. In England, in the UK, we have Her Majesty's Inspectors, right? They go around schools and they tell teachers what they think is correct and what is incorrect. And so they came up some time ago with this phrase: learners had no problem understanding lessons competently taught entirely in the target language. Okay? Now, this presents a bit of a circular problem, right? They had no problem understanding if the lesson was competently taught. The lesson was only competently taught if they understood. Okay, can you see there's a certain circularity here which doesn't get to the actual nub of the problem. Now, another reason that it's still worth looking into this whole issue is the big debate between the native speaker teacher and the non-native speaker teacher. If you've read anything on this, it's raging across the world, partly because, you get these 18-year-old Brits or Americans or New Zealanders or Canadians who come to a country at the age of 18 with no experience, no training, and they get jobs teaching English purely because they are native speakers of English. So that's the big discussion around the world. Now, so the balance is, who's better, the native speaker teacher or the non-native speaker teacher? Well, actually, this controversy is only really an issue in EFL because of the global position of English as a lingua franca, kind of dominating the world kind of thing. Also, the word native is imprecise and contestable. There are many different types of varieties of English for a start, and increasing number of varieties of English. And in any case, I am not a native speaker of English, although I can pass as a native speaker of English. So this is not necessarily the language you hear at birth, but the language you can best operate in. And so I've stopped using non-native speaker teacher and native speaker teacher, and now I use monolingual teacher and bilingual teacher. Now, you can be a monolingual teacher and be bilingual. Okay? If I go and teach English in Korea, I'm a monolingual teacher, even though I'm trilingual. You see the difference, okay? The problem is the monolingual teacher gives the label, that's the only language I can teach in, whereas the bilingual teacher, the label is, look, I can teach possibly using two languages, okay? And that's, I think, a more accurate description of the actual situation. So let me tell you a little bit about the research at Oxford. This is research that I've done, research that postdocs have done, and also research that my students have done. One of my students, Jiang Shanan, is looking at an international school in mainland China, and she's looking at academic subjects taught through English, EMI, and they are being taught by monolingual Canadian, actually, teachers. So the research questions, they are there, and you can read them for yourself. What are the reactions of the students? How do they feel about being taught by a monolingual teacher? Watch this space. I think you're going to find when she publishes the results of her study, it's going to be very interesting. Now, another reason that we should be interested in is in this big debate, the sociolinguistic aspect of English, the sociocultural aspect of English. As you know, there are many writers around the world. Surprisingly, they are mostly monolingual English writers. Phillipson, Kirkpatrick, and Jenkins, who are arguing against English as an international language, the dangers of English as an international language. Phillipson sees it as a potential pandemic. Kirkpatrick sees it as we may be hurtling disastrously towards a global society based on Anglo-Saxon values. Now, I don't believe, and I've only been in Mexico for about 8 hours, but actually, I don't think Mexico is hurtling disastrously towards a global society based on Anglo-Saxon values. And it shouldn't. And then Jenkins has this idea about English as a lingua franca, the anti-native speaker model. Let's get away from the native speaker model altogether. And so some more research on that kind of theme is being carried out by my other student, Samantha Saito, who is looking at the Japanese higher education system and the imposition of English medium instruction in what are called the Global 30. I don't know if you've heard about this, but the Japanese government designated 30 Japanese universities that had to internationalize by 2020. And they could only internationalize by EMI, but that's tomorrow's workshop. Anyways. So looking at whether the medium of instruction is being imposed, and then the second question is it actually English as the medium of instruction or simply a medium of instruction? Okay. And then there's this whole issue of sociocultural theory, which you may or may not be familiar with, and the latest buzzword, which is translanguaging. You may have... Anyway, can I just ask you to put your hands up? Have you come across the word translanguaging? Come across the word translanguaging? Okay, that's interesting. Okay, the idea of this is the L1, the first language, is a tool with which the individual not only thinks about the language during use, which we all know we do, the inner voice for working out the task in question, but also the tool with which he or she progresses the task with others. Now, from this group of studies, this evidence, so far, the evidence is that the first language does facilitate a task, but then that's obvious. It's bound to make the task go more smoothly or more quickly. However, there is no evidence whatsoever that it facilitates acquisition. So we've got to be careful with these areas of study that are trying to find out about the use of L1. The evidence that translanguaging amongst learners develops their interlanguage or their language skills is very thin. So whether it's to do with national policies, linguistic imperialism, bilingual teachers, or translanguaging, in my view, the use of the L1 and the amount of that use cannot be left undetermined, whether that's in an EFL context, a general MFL context, or an EMI context. We have to talk about it, and we have to establish some rules, some parameters. No study shows positive outcomes of a classroom typified by impoverished L2 input and interaction. If you think of countries across the world which in the world rankings are at the lowest in terms of their English capacity, you will find that those correlate with those countries where the classrooms are virtually all in the L1. And I'm not mentioning countries, and I'm not talking about Mexico. Okay. So basically what we've got to say is this promotion of a lot of L1 use, translation in English language teaching, is it really basically trying to come back to a grammar translation method, which I know didn't work for me when I was learning French. I know it didn't work for my students when I was teaching them early on in my career. And so is it that? Is that what it's trying to do, is to come back? So here are some more bits of research as I seed my talk with some of the research at Oxford. Do children and adults prefer monolingual or bilingual teachers? How do children and adults respond to English only or code switching? So we're looking at age here as a factor. And this is in Korea. Our findings were that there was no teacher preference on the basis of whether they were monolingual or bilingual. The different attributes of the teacher were valued. Other things about teachers were valued. Adults were more comfortable with monolingual teachers, but that's not surprising. Lower proficiency children are going to be more comfortable if they can hear their first language. Another research question that was asked by a doctoral student, who's now Dr. Maria Vriki, is does code switching by young learners, these are young learners in Cyprus learning English, does code switching by young learners in tasks lead to eventual greater willingness to communicate? And the answer was a tentative yes. In other words, if they were allowed to use some L1 as they were trying to do a task, then they became more willing to communicate in their productions later on. But look at the word eventual. There has got to be a movement, yes, from some L1 use towards more L2 use. I did a similar study with some Japanese students in Oxford. They came to Oxford, first year undergraduate students from Japan. We divided the groups up. Both groups had a monolingual English teacher, a teacher who could not speak Japanese. And then one group had a monolingual assistant in the classroom, and the other group had a bilingual assistant in the classroom. What we found was that, Japanese students tend to be very reluctant to speak English early on in any course, and in general anyway. What we found was that by having a bilingual assistant in the classroom in the early stages, when they were feeling very vulnerable, it helped them to start speaking in English. So another tentative yes, but notice again, initially with gradual fading out of the bilingual assistant helping them through Japanese. Now, the next question we need to ask, the next question we need to ask, and I've kind of already touched on this, is what classroom are we actually talking about? Now, it seems to me that there is only a point to talking about L1 use or switching if we are talking about a meaning-focused classroom, right? Where the purpose is to teach the meaning of something, either content or the meaning of some kind of text or something like that. So, you're familiar with the word CLIL, or the acronym CLIL, which is Content and Language Integrated Learning. This is a very European term. EMI, I've already mentioned, which is English Medium Instruction. So, maths taught through English, chemistry taught through English. Content-based language learning, it's an American term. Immersion, Canadian term. And English for specific purposes. I'm sure you're aware of what that is. All those types of classrooms are meaning-focused classrooms, right? They are about communicating the meaning of something rather than focusing on language as an object. Okay? They're not saying this is a verb, this is a noun, this is how you put the noun before the verb, and this is what you have as an adverb, right? It's about communicating meaning. Now, it seems to me perfectly legitimate to ask the question, what part does the first language play in those kinds of classrooms? I see no point whatsoever researching classrooms which are grammar translation classrooms. You're bound to get L1 if you're doing translation. Yeah? If you're saying this is what it's like in Spanish, this is what it's like in English, this is what it's like in Japanese, this is what it's like in English, you are bound to be using 40, 50, 60% L1. So there's no point in researching those. So let's have a look at one classroom. This is a study that kind of triggered my interest in medium of instruction. And this is set in Hong Kong with now Dr. Yuan Yi Lo. And we looked at whether classes which switched at the age of about 14 from Chinese medium of instruction to English medium of instruction, and to see whether the interaction changed as a result of that switch. So the same teacher in grade 9, is teaching in Chinese, and then is asked to teach through English in year 10, grade 10, or I don't know what year, okay? And what we found was there was a big change in the interactional patterns. As you can imagine, they became less interactive. Yes, the teachers became more monological. Yes, in other words, they talked all the time, and didn't ask questions or didn't ask the students to ask questions because they were afraid that the students wouldn't be able to ask questions or that they wouldn't then be able to mediate the content of the lesson. They would look at geography and biology lessons. So, a lesson to be learned is switching from one language medium of instruction to English medium of instruction, you've got to look at the interaction patterns. So, what have we got? Have we got two models of language learning pulling in different directions? Have we got the interaction hypothesis on the one hand and code switching on the other? The interaction hypothesis, for people who don't know about that, is basically this. We can understand just by listening, even if we don't understand all the words. We can still understand the words from the context. This is Krashen's hypothesis, which I'm sure people in the EFL will know about. But not only can we understand, we can learn. Okay, this is a big debated hypothesis that if simply by understanding something, the meaning of something, you can also understand you can also learn. And the other one, part of the interaction hypothesis, is that you can meaning negotiate. If you don't understand something, you can say, can you repeat? Can you say that again? Do you mean this? Do you mean that? Yes? Those are the fundamental tenets of the interaction hypothesis. There's a third component of that, and I'm going to come to that in a moment. Or is it to do with, if you can't understand, I'll give you a bit of L1, I'll give you a bit of Spanish in your case. I think that actually the problem is there is a tension in the interaction hypothesis. On the one hand, it's pulling in one direction, saying, okay, what we want to do is get you to listen to the language. I want you to make sure that you try and use strategies to use the language in order to understand what I'm saying. I want you to meaning negotiate, etc., etc., etc. On the other hand, there is Merrill Swain's work, which talked about forced output or pushed output or encouraging output. In other words, making learners talk, right? Now, the problem is that if you spend all your time trying to do this, then you're not trying to do that, because there's very little learner talk in the comprehensible input and negotiation of meaning. The most they might be saying is, can you repeat? Can you say this again? What does that bit mean? But that's not really pushing them to speak. So what we want to do is to force them to speak, but the tension is between the two. You can't force them to speak unless you give them an opportunity to do so, and the opportunity to do so comes possibly from setting up tasks where you may need to use the first language. So, I use the word code switching rather than first language, partly because I think we want to minimize it or use it sparingly, but also because there is plenty of naturalistic research, i.e. what people use in the world, and I'm sure that you know about code switching in this country. And there are rules for code switching, and I think those can tell us quite a lot about what to do in the classroom. And I'm much more in favor of intra-sentential switching than inter-sentential switching. Intra means within a sentence, or within a clause, or within an utterance, and inter means between utterances. And I think that leads to more principled use of L1. Let me give you some examples. Here is an email sent to some Italians, a group of Italian academics, of which I was one, and you can see we've got some Italian there in an email, and from now and again in red we have some English being switched to in order to make a point, or to borrow some words, or to make it more interesting, or because they're spending a lot of time in England talking about those things. Here's another one. I got this email. I happen to have a house in Italy, and my cooker went wrong. And this person wrote to me and said, "Hello, in order for me to come and fix your cooker, I need the model of your cooker, and I need the code, which you're going to find at the bottom of the oven door. And also, I'm going to ask you for the as you can see, yeah? So even someone writing to me, telling me that someone's coming to fix my cooker in Italy is using some English, okay? But what do you notice? You notice that they are switching intrasententially, a word here and there. And what do you also notice is that the languages are not being violated. The grammar of the languages is not being violated. In other words, they're learning to be bilinguals. They're learning what you can do and what you can't do. And this is a true example, which I love this example. I know this family in France, an English mother with a French father. Tom is about 4 or 5 years old. Mum says, "Tom, hurry up." Tom says, "Mais je me hurry up." Mum says, "Yes, but you're not ready." And Tom says, "Toi non plus, tu n'es pas ready." And Mum says, "Yes, but I'm not talking." Yes, "Oui, mais moi je me get ready en talkant." Yeah? So what you've got here is the birth of bilingualism. Okay? And what you've got is not intersentential switching, but you've got the gradual building ability to see how the languages can be interplayed. And that's why I think looking at the way that people use language naturalistically is a very useful model for teachers teaching English as a foreign language, or MOI teachers. This is a teacher in China. And you can see this is an example of intersentential switching between Chinese and English. But this isn't, in my view, code switching. I don't know if you can read. Yes, you can. As you can probably see, I'll just let you read a bit of it. Okay, so this teacher is teaching physics, obviously, and they go on and on and on and on and on and on in English. And then she says, I can use, right at the bottom here, I can use Chinese to explain. Give me a clue. 10 minutes, okay. She says, I can use Chinese to explain. And then she doesn't wait. She doesn't wait for the students to say, yes, please, teacher, explain. Oh, no, we've understood everything, teacher. She just goes straight away into Chinese. And what do you think happens next? Well, actually, she just starts talking Chinese. Okay? Now, that's not code switching. Okay? That is not code switching. That's not helping the students. Okay? That is not doing, basically, that's pretending to teach EMI. Okay. Now, I'm very interested in vocabulary. Vocabulary, remember, was one of the things that came up early on. Difficult to put across the real meaning of vocabulary through the L2 only. So we've done a lot of studies on vocabulary, and they all show that if you give an L1 equivalent for vocabulary, people remember the vocabulary better. Okay, it's all there. There's that one. So that one was in China. That one is in England. That one is in China as well. They all show the same thing. Yeah, if you give an equivalent, L1 equivalent of vocabulary, they will remember it better. Okay, but we did one study where we asked the students to listen to a teacher attempting to not use any L1, okay? So the teacher gave the explanation of a word, an L2 word, okay, only using the L2. And so we asked the question, what was the learner's strategic reaction to trying to understand the teacher, trying to stick to L2 only? And what we found was we've got a problem on our hands because this was Year 9 learners of French in the UK. and they had to listen to the teacher. And then a bit later on, we asked them, they watched the video of the teacher, and we said, can you remember what you were thinking at the time when the teacher was trying to explain to you the meaning of the word in L2? Now, what we found was that students' strategies for understanding the word, the L2 word, were very limited. They were almost entirely reliant on the cognate nature of the word. And then when she gave the explanation of the word, cognate, yes, we're clear on cognate, means it's similar, like Spanish, yes, table, okay. Student strategies for understanding the L2 explanations were also very limited. Even the explanations, all they thought about was whether it sounded like the L1. So there's a problem there. If one wants to be able to stick to the L2, we have to teach the students the strategies for inferring the meanings of words, thinking about what they look like, not only thinking about what they sounds like in the L1. And in Spanish you've got particularly that kind of situation, haven't you? So many words in English are like Spanish. And so if you say a word in English like table, then they're going to think, okay, that sounds like the Spanish or whatever. And so there is a real danger that cognates, on the one hand, can be extremely helpful, but they can also be extremely unhelpful, because that's all they focus on. And this study really demonstrated, I was very surprised, just how much they spent, of the time they spent, just saying, oh, it looks like the L1. So, if teachers want to put across the meaning of new lexical items, they need to help the students to cope with L2 only input. They need alternative strategies to it sounds like L1 or cognates. And then my student, he's now Dr. Fung again, literally just become a doctor, and he's been looking at this learner's strategic reaction to teacher English-only input. This is in Hong Kong. So this is how do they go about trying to understand the teacher's L2-only input? And what he found was that there were some very strategic students who might have had quite low vocabulary, but were finding ways to overcome their problems. Okay? So it's not just about how high proficiency you are, or high vocabulary you might have, it's how do you use strategies to overcome your low proficiency problems. So I've been working on this model and you may have come across it, and it's basically looking at, excuse me. Does that help? Yeah, it does. Okay, so you've got the L2 concept here, and you've got the monolingual teacher or a bilingual teacher, and you've got bilingual teacher here, right? And what I've called it is teacher as the dictionary designer. Now, the reason I've called it a dictionary designer is because people often talk, I don't know if you have this in Spanish, but do you have the idea of a teacher as a walking dictionary? Maybe? No? Okay. No? You never heard of it? Okay, the idea that they're a walking dictionary. Okay. In other words, they're a dictionary designer as well as a walking dictionary, because they have to think not only, look, I can give you the word, but what information should I give you? One of the big problems at the moment with the internet is that students think they can easily get access to the meaning of a word just by typing it into Google or Google Translate or whatever. But when you find the difference between Google Translate and a really good quality online dictionary is the explanations that are given in the good quality online dictionary. Explanations, examples, and so on. Yeah, an online dictionary will give you, an online dictionary will give you definitions, paraphrases, possibly circumlocutions, even an exposition. I won't go into detail. Contextualization, synonym, antonym, and even a possible hierarchical exemplification. Dog, puppy, greyhound, yes, dog is at the top of the hierarchy, greyhound is at the bottom of the hierarchy. Okay, so I'm really interested in this idea about the teacher as a dictionary designer. Okay, so they come across a new word in the classroom. What does the teacher do? How much information do they give? And so we did a study with a colleague in China, Lily Chan, asking the question, what are the different explanation types provided by 3 Chinese university teachers of English for new or unfamiliar lexical items? To what extent do these explanation types differ from the information provided in dictionaries? Now, we didn't use online dictionaries, but we did use the Oxford Dictionary of English, which is a monolingual dictionary. We use the bilingual dictionary, and we use the co-build English version. Okay, so so here what we've got is teacher Zhang. Yep, the original text says. So they're reading a text in the classroom, right? And it says, there is, as the old saying goes, no rest for the wicked in a place like this, and not much for the virtuous either. Okay? What does the teacher do about that difficult construction, no rest for the wicked? I would imagine quite a lot of people in this audience who are language teachers would struggle with no rest for the wicked. It's a really complicated metaphor, a really complicated collocation, actually. Okay? It means something like, I'm working really, really hard, and there's no rest. I'm not really wicked, but there's no rest for me. Okay? It's really impossible to put across. Anyway, so we looked in the dictionary. We didn't have the phrase. Okay? The ODE said evil or morally wrong, referring to wicked. BID said morally bad, gave some Chinese. And then the co-build said you use wicked to describe someone or something that is very bad and deliberately harmful to people. Now, all that just to say the locations. You can see here, I mean, Zhang is metaphor. She's how to say good people, and actually only really provides information about the word wicked. However, the word sensationalism, which comes up in a text, is actually very, very interesting. Because the Oxford Dictionary of English says the use of exciting or shocking stories at the expense of accuracy. The bilingual dictionary says pretty much the same thing, and then gives a almost identical Chinese translation, which is given here. That's the translation from the Chinese. The co-build doesn't give the word that, but says you can describe stories or reports as sensational if you disapprove. Doesn't give the word sensationalism, but it gives the word sensational anyway. But you can see here what the teacher does. I think this is really clever. Feature 2, it utilizes to attract viewers to generate advertising profits. Sensationalism. Do you still remember this term? And then she gives the exact meaning in Chinese to demonstrate that there is a perfect equivalent in Chinese to the English. Now, I think that's really useful, okay? That you will remember that, and that's why I think people use that mental lexicon is built up like that, because in that case, there's absolutely, for me, every good reason to give that information. You're providing useful information for a bilingual lexicon in the learner's brain. The key to something is very similar. You know, you've got the same thing again. I'll just let you read that. And he says, no. And then here, very interesting. Did he use the word important? No, he didn't use this word. So what kind of word did he use? And the students say, key. They do that a lot in China, this chorus. Okay, we've got a very important phrase, a key to, okay. If you want to say something is very important, you will say something is a key to something. What is the key to something in Chinese? And then, there is a direct equivalent, so it helps to kind of fix that idea that the collocation is available in another language. This one doesn't work so well. This one doesn't work so well. Because what we've got here is the word literally that is being used more and more and more in the world today, and it doesn't mean anything to do with literal at all. And here, in the text, the force of habit, literally the established wiring of your brain, just means I'm saying force of habit and established wiring in the brain. It's psychology, right? Okay? Or psycholinguistics. The force of habit means establishing wiring in the brain. And really, the teacher doesn't get to grips with that problem of the word literally here. I'm not blaming the teacher, it's just a really difficult thing to do. I'm just saying, that's the challenge that language teachers face. This is one just to make you laugh a little bit. And usually, by the way, Zheng is a female teacher, so if you want to beat her up because she says, couch potato, do you know this term? Who are the couch potatoes? Housewives. You may feel a little bit put out by that. Have you ever been a couch potato? Now, here, you could ask yourself the question, was it really necessary to translate couch and potato? Because couch potato doesn't exist in Chinese. You see what I mean? Yeah? So you've got couch and potato. Couch exists, potato exists, but couch potato doesn't exist. So you kind of need to ask the question, is it worth asking that one? Okay. I'm running out of time. So what are my conclusions? Well, if you remember, back in 1997, most teachers believed the L2 should be the predominant language of the classroom. Most teachers felt limited L1 was useful. They felt that the L1 facilitated setting up tasks, communication by the students, and the L1 sometimes was needed to explain new lexical items which arise in interaction. Well, I'm afraid that those are pretty much my conclusions nearly 20 years later. The L2 should be the predominant language of the classroom. The L1 should be limited. It could be useful, but you've got to ask yourself, at what cost? What is the cost of using L1? L1 can be justified if it leads to the students speaking in English, in the target language, if you can be pushing them towards saying something that they wouldn't normally be saying. Then you're creating a situation where they can learn and they can benefit. And then finally, as I've been trying to explain, the first language sometimes is needed to focus on lexical form when new lexical items arise in the interaction, because the mental lexicon can benefit from the comparison or the juxtaposition of both vocabularies. So basically, 20 years later, I've come to the same conclusions, so I've basically wasted 20 years of my life. So thank you very much for listening.
Agradecemos la ponencia por parte del doctor Ernesto Macaro. Es el momento de iniciar con la ceremonia de investidura, por lo cual pedimos a los integrantes del Honorable Presidium pasen a ocupar su lugar en el estrado. Preside esta ceremonia de investidura el maestro Humberto Augusto Veras Godoy, rector de la Universidad Autónoma del Estado de Hidalgo y presidente del Consorcio de Universidades Mexicanas, CUMEX. Le acompañan el maestro Adolfo Pontigo Loyola, secretario general de esta Casa de Estudios. Saludamos al doctor Roberto Rodríguez Gaona, secretario de Desarrollo Internacional de la Universidad. Nuestro invitado distinguido, el doctor Ernesto Macaro. De igual forma nos acompaña el doctor Edmundo Hernández Hernández, director del Instituto de Ciencias Sociales y Humanidades. Saludamos a la licenciada Lidia García Anaya, secretaria general del Sindicato de Personal Académico de la Universidad. Saludamos al compañero Jaime Galindo Jiménez, secretario general del Sindicato Único de Trabajadores y Empleados de la Universidad Autónoma del Estado de Hidalgo. Damos la bienvenida a Jorge Mayorga Olvera, presidente del Consejo Estudiantil Universitario del Estado de Hidalgo. De igual forma, destacamos la presencia de directores de escuelas e institutos de la universidad. Doctor Orlando Ávila Pozos, director del Instituto de Ciencias Básicas e Ingeniería. Doctor Roberto Estrada Bárcenas, director del Instituto de Ciencias Económico-Administrativas. Médico cirujano especialista José María Busto Villarreal, director del Instituto de Ciencias de la Salud. Doctor Otilio Acevedo Sandoval, director del Instituto de Ciencias Agropecuarias. Licenciado José Luis Gil Chávez, director de la Escuela Preparatoria número 1. Licenciado Pipino Morales Gamero, director de la Escuela Preparatoria número 3. Licenciado Isaías Guzmán Lerma, director de la Escuela Preparatoria número 4. Agradecemos la presencia de coordinadores de división, funcionarios universitarios, representantes de los medios de comunicación. En particular, damos la más cordial bienvenida a nuestros invitados e invitadas especiales, profesores y estudiantes de nuestra universidad. Sean todos bienvenidos. Solicitamos a todos los presentes, por favor, ponerse de pie. Para dar inicio con esta ceremonia, el rector, el maestro Humberto Augusto Veras Godoy, realiza la investidura de la beca académica al doctor Ernesto Macaro. Asimismo, le hace entrega del reconocimiento como nuevo profesor honorario visitante, el cual a la letra dice: la Universidad Autónoma del Estado de Hidalgo otorga a Ernesto Macaro el reconocimiento como profesor honorario visitante, en virtud de ser un reconocido experto internacional en enseñanza del inglés como lengua extranjera y liderar el único centro a nivel mundial para la investigación y el desarrollo de la lengua inglesa como medio de enseñanza dentro de la prestigiada Universidad de Oxford. Amor, Orden y Progreso, Pachuca de Soto Hidalgo, México, 21 de abril de 2016. Firma el maestro Humberto Veras Godoy, rector de nuestra universidad, y al anverso firma el maestro Adolfo Pontigo Loyola, secretario general. Invitamos a todos los presentes a tomar sus lugares. A continuación escucharemos el mensaje de aceptación del nuevo profesor honorario visitante del doctor Ernesto Macaro.
Thank you. Dear President Humberto Veras, thank you for bestowing upon me the title of Distinguished Visiting Professor. Now the difficult bit. Es un gran honor estar aquí en la maravillosa y prestigiosa Universidad de Hidalgo. Espero sinceramente que la conexión entre nuestras dos instituciones siga adelante en el futuro. I apologize for my poor Spanish and will now return to more familiar ground. The world of higher education is changing very rapidly, and all universities in virtually all countries are attempting to internationalize in response to increasing globalization and student mobility. Attracting international students is important for my own University of Oxford, as I would imagine it is for yours. But what I always maintain, and I very much hope in this internationalization process, is that higher education, universities, involves itself in it not just for instrumental financial gain, but for other reasons. To truly internationalize, I believe, involves intercultural understanding among students and faculty alike, and ultimately an offer of an ever more intercultural curriculum. I'm therefore so delighted to learn about the initiatives that the University of Hidalgo is making in this respect, with its international seminar program and its attendant festivities. And I look forward to hearing more about them. Now, unfortunately, because of many other commitments, this is a very short trip to Pachuca, but I very much hope that I will be able to visit it again in the not too distant future. So once again, Mr. President, thank you for your invitation and for the title you've given me. Thank you.
A continuación se asentará como testimonio para la memoria histórica de nuestra universidad la firma en el libro de profesorado honorario visitante de nuestra Casa de Estudios por parte del doctor Ernesto Macaro. Nos dirige su mensaje el maestro Humberto Augusto Veras Godoy, rector de la Universidad Autónoma del Estado de Hidalgo y presidente del Consorcio de Universidades Mexicanas, CUMEX.
Buena tarde, tengan la razón de ser de esta casa de estudios, ustedes distinguidos estudiantes que están aquí reunidos en este recinto. Gracias por estar aquí y gracias por compartir esta experiencia exitosa en la Autónoma del Estado de Hidalgo. Un saludo respetuoso para todos ustedes. Permítanme, a nombre de la Universidad Autónoma del Estado de Hidalgo y a nombre de todos los profesores e investigadores de nuestra Casa de Estudios, dar la más cordial bienvenida a este claustro de profesores al doctor Ernesto Macaro, quien es el director de EMI Oxford, un centro de investigación y desarrollo de la lengua inglesa, líder en el contexto internacional, pero también quien ha sido y es docente de lingüística aplicada. Saludo también con mucho respeto y aprecio a los integrantes del Presidium, al señor Secretario General, al señor Secretario de Desarrollo Internacional, al señor Director del Instituto de Ciencias Sociales y Humanidades, a la distinguida Secretaria General del Sindicato de Personal Académico de nuestra Casa de Estudios, al Secretario del Sindicato de Trabajadores y Empleados de la Autónoma del Estado de Hidalgo, al Presidente del Consejo Estudiantil Universitario del Estado y también con mucho aprecio a los directores, directoras, funcionarios que nos acompañan en esta ceremonia. Hoy la Autónoma del Estado de Hidalgo recibe con mucho orgullo a un universitario ejemplar, un ejemplar personaje mundial, artífice del mundo globalizado, que aceptó con mucho agrado la designación que le hizo el Honorable Consejo Universitario para ser investido en esta ceremonia como profesor honorario visitante. Agradezco al doctor Ernesto Macaro la aceptación de pertenecer a nuestro claustro de profesores y por supuesto también estar en este recinto y en esta prestigiosa universidad. En el marco del Festival Internacional de la Imagen, el cual inició el día de ayer y que de manera oficial será inaugurado el día de mañana, estamos realizando una actividad muy importante dentro del régimen de seminarios internacionales para el alumnado, con la incorporación de distinguidas personalidades académicas de todas las latitudes. Doctor Ernesto Macaro, la Autónoma del Estado de Hidalgo, a partir de hoy, es su casa, una institución pública con un alto compromiso en la enseñanza de la lengua inglesa, plasmado y contemplado en el modelo educativo que considera esta competencia como parte importante en el perfil de egreso de todos nuestros alumnos de los diferentes niveles educativos. Usted ha construido un puente para poder integrar de una mejor forma a nuestras instituciones, pero también para contribuir de manera directa a la comprensión y difusión de la lengua inglesa. Los resultados que usted ha obtenido han dado como producto un fortalecimiento de la investigación en este mundo globalizado que por excelencia requiere esta competencia. La Autónoma del Estado de Hidalgo le recibe con orgullo y aprecio y lo considera desde hoy garza de esta Casa de Estudios. A todos los profesores universitarios, a los investigadores de nuestra Casa de Estudios, les agradezco también la gran oportunidad de construir juntos esta nueva etapa de nuestra Casa de Estudios, pero además el fortalecer y el dar mejores oportunidades de formación a la razón de ser de una institución educativa como la nuestra, que son los estudiantes. Ustedes, distinguidos jóvenes, son los que tendrán la oportunidad, gracias al trabajo realizado por muchas instancias de nuestra institución, de contar con mejores herramientas y espacios para fortalecer su formación, para construir un marco extraordinario, para concluir lo que ustedes han aspirado siempre, una meta que no está muy lejana, pero que su casa de estudios también contribuye a formarla. Sigan adelante y sigan aprovechando y siendo lo que son, gente brillante, valiosa para nuestra casa de estudios. Reitero al doctor Ernesto Macaro el recibimiento en esta casa de estudios, pero además expresarle que aun cuando él lo dijo hace un momento, en un corto tiempo en su estancia en Pachuca, estamos invitando para que permanentemente pueda estar en contacto por todos los medios de comunicación y de manera presencial en esta institución, en esta gran casa de estudios comprometida con la calidad. Muchas gracias a todos y todas, porque somos garzas, somos universitarios de excelencia. Mi orgullo es mi universidad. Amor, orden y progreso.
Pedimos a todos los presentes ponernos de pie para escuchar de manera respetuosa el himno universitario por excelencia, Gaudeamus Igitur, a cargo de la Camerata Universitaria. A el nuevo profesor